Hi writers, today we're going to talk about one of the most powerful tools for writing, and that is using emotional triggers. These are moments in your story that make your reader gasp, cry, or feel like they've been punched in the gut in the most positive way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a story, a book with you that really touched my heart and almost made me put the book down because of the emotional triggers that were in it. So let's get started.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. For just meeting, I am Julia Monte. I'm a women's fiction author. I've been writing for over 25 years and I am by no means consider myself an expert, although I have been writing for a long time because I'm always learning. But I do want to share what I do know with you. So welcome and let's get started. All right, so the first time I read this book, it was called Dream a Little Dream by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. And it was published, I believe, in 1998, which was the same year that my son was born. And I didn't read it that same year. It was probably a couple years later because I remember being a young mother when I sat to read the book. And this is the opening scene. The main character is Rachel Stone, and she's a single widowed mother who is broke and whose car breaks down in front of a drive-in theater. And to make it very short, she offers herself, her body, to a stranger, to the man who owns this studio. He's looking for someone to work there. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He's got his own problems. He's completely emotionally closed off. He turns her down, not in a nice way. And what really got me was that this woman was willing to be completely vulnerable, to put her pride aside for the sake of her child. She's got a 5-year-old son who she needs a home for, she needs food for. They have nothing. She has like the last $10 in her pocket. So maybe because I was a young mother at the time, it completely gutted me. I was just like, oh my, I almost had to close the book because it was so, and it was very strong the way she wrote it. But as a writer, I was in awe because Susan Elizabeth Phillips did not just introduce a character. She triggered a flood of emotions in the reader because the reader could identify with that character. So there were all kinds of emotions, right? There was empathy for the character. There was, you could feel her shame. You could feel her hope. And as a reader, when he dismisses her so coldly, you can feel your own anger at her situation. And of course, I did not put the book down. I kept reading. And why? Because Phillips is a master at creating emotion. The emotions were raw, they were relatable, they were humanizing. The fact that Rachel could put her own dignity aside for the sake of her child triggers all the motherly instincts, right? It triggers all the compassion, it triggers the protectiveness that we have for our kids. It tugs at our heartstrings for the injustice, especially with this opening scene, because we have no idea what Rachel's background is. All we know is that she is this mother who is not trying to seduce this man at all. She's trying to sacrifice herself just to get some money to feed her child. And I remember as I was reading this, I was just recently published. My first book hadn't even come out, I don't think, at that time. I was just published, or I had just sold my first book. And I knew that that was the kind of writer that I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to evoke these types of emotions in readers. I wanted to make readers feel the way Susan Elizabeth Phillips made me feel. And if you're not using emotional triggers, you're missing out, and you're missing an opportunity to connect with your readers. So let's talk about what emotional triggers are. So in psychological terms, it's just something that triggers an emotion in a person. So something happens, it triggers an emotion. It could be anger, it could be joy, it could be fear, it could be different types of things depending on what that trigger is. But in fiction, they're emotional hotspots that pull readers into the character's experience, and that's why they're so important. So a mother that sacrifices herself for a child, we can relate to that. It creates a trigger in us that we instantly can relate to that character, and we instantly want to be on her side. And there are many situations like this. It really depends on the story. Maybe you're writing a story about a soldier and there's fireworks that that trigger, right, a reaction in him, and that's going to trigger a reaction in the reader as well, especially if that reader is a soldier, especially if that reader has had a traumatic experience and understands that a loud noise or some other outside thing can take that person back to that event and trigger them. And what I want to make clear is that when we are writing, when I'm telling you to put these emotional triggers into your story, it's not a trick or a hack. It's not like other writers' tools, and it's not manipulative, although I will come back to that. But it's not a typical hack. What it really is honest, layered storytelling that mimics real life. So readers can see themselves in that character, or they can see someone they love in that character. They can relate to it, and the character and the scene maybe becomes unforgettable to them. So that scene that I read, what, 20 some years ago, 25 years ago, is still kind of seared into my brain. Why? Because I had such an emotional reaction. I've read how many books? I can't even tell you how many books I've read since that book. But I still remember that opening scene because it touched me so strongly. And I can't tell you what all the emotional triggers are because it's not like there's just a list of them. I can give you a list. I can give you a list of a few. So abandonment and neglect, that could be an emotional trigger. Romantic betrayal, that's another, who hasn't had their heart broken. Loss of a loved one, a child that's in danger, public rejection or humiliation, a struggle for redemption, triumph of an underdog. So what are all these? Why are these triggers? Well, because they're common emotional experiences and feelings that we have probably all had. We probably have all had them in some way, right? So not exactly the same way as the main character has, but we have had something that's similar enough that we understand that feeling. So they're universal feelings that many people have felt. And that's what connects us to that reader. That's what makes us feel for that character, not the reader. Okay, so let's talk for a second about manipulation. Are we trying to manipulate our reader? And the answer is yes. Is this bad? No. It's not like we're trying to manipulate our best friend to do something, right? What we're doing is bringing out these emotions in a reader, and this is exactly what they want you to do. So if somebody buys a romance, right, and they want to read it, they want to cry, they want to have these emotions that are related to love and hurt and passion and all of that, right? If that's not in the book, if you don't manipulate your reader to feel these things, they're not going to buy your next book. Same thing with all types of books or horror. If somebody is a horror reader, you better scare them, right? You better create these characters and these feelings so that the reader feels what they bought the book to feel. So are we manipulating them? Yes, we are, in the best way possible, because that's why they bought the book. That's why they buy a book for a story, but they really buy the books for the feelings that you're creating, for the emotions that you're helping them to feel, right? So as they read through your story and they read through all the action scenes and they read through all of this, you're pulling them in with the emotions. That's what they're reading for. So how do we do this? Let me give you 6 ways to do it. Are they all the ways? Probably not. There's probably more, but here are 6 very common ways to elicit emotions and to create emotional triggers to make your scenes, your books, your characters unforgettable. The first one is to know your character's wound. So what is it that has wounded this character in the past? So if the character, let's say the female character, is afraid to love, maybe because her father abandoned her. Or maybe there's a man who's desperate to prove himself because he never feels good enough for whatever reason you make up. But the point is that the backstory is important because you have to understand what wounded the character so that you know how to trigger the character in the story. Okay, the second is show, don't tell. And you've heard this before, I'm sure, many times. Well, why? Because this helps to elicit emotion in the reader. So don't say that she was devastated. What will you do? You'll just show her maybe walking into the house, slowly closing the door, going into her room, curling up in her bed in a fetal position, starting to cry, right? Whatever you want to do to show how devastated she is or what a bad day she's had. This helps us to see what she's going through and to feel what the character's feeling. These are sensory cues that you are giving the reader. The reader doesn't know this. The reader is just reading the actions of the character. But all of these are sensory cues that helps them to connect with that reader and to feel the emotions that the character is probably feeling. The third is to create emotional setups and payoffs. So you want to, what does that mean? You want to give some hint. Let's say that the character is afraid of being left behind. Well, maybe what you can show is, things like missed birthdays by parents or something in the past that prepares us for the future, for a betrayal that's going to happen. So you want to set those up within your novel and then pay it off later in the novel. The fourth is contrast or juxtaposition within your story. So let me give you an example. Think of a time in your life when you were expecting one thing and then you got something different, right? Could be you were expecting something bad, you got something good. You were expecting something good, you got something bad. That contrast makes the emotion even stronger. So let's say that a husband comes home with just pizza and beer, and the wife says, she's very excited. He remembered their anniversary, and she's like, okay, well, this isn't the most romantic thing in the world, but at least he remembered, right? And then he says something like, and so she's excited, right? She's happy. He remembered. Yeah, okay, could have been more romantic, but I'm still excited because he remembered, right? But then he says something like, oh, honey, my friends are coming over to watch the game tonight. So now she realizes what? No, this wasn't for me. This was for my buddies, his buddies. So now there's a letdown, there's disappointment, there's hurt. It's even stronger than if he had just come in and had forgotten, right? So if he had just come in and she's like, oh, remember it's our anniversary? Oh, but because she was excited first, right? She had hope first. Then she's let down, it becomes even stronger. The emotion is felt even more. So sometimes it helps to do that. You want to have something horrifying happen. Maybe something funny happens first, right? You want to have something joyful and something hurtful might happen first, and then it turns into joy. So you don't want to do this all the time, but it's nice sometimes, and it helps to, again, manipulate, elicit some more stronger emotions in the reader. The fifth tip is to use metaphors or symbolism, because it's a more subtle way to bring out emotions, but when there's symbols, it helps us, it connects us more. It's more of an artistic way of bringing out emotions. And sometimes it recurs a lot. So maybe there's a song that recurs during the story, or there's some event that keeps happening again and again, and that represents something to the reader, to the character, and it brings out, again, emotion in the reader. And the sixth one is to write with specificity, so write with detail. The more specific you can be about what is happening in the story, the more the reader is going to connect. So emotional writing isn't about like grand declarations and melodrama. It's really about how you're building your story, one detail after another, that leads to that grand emotion whenever you want it, right? Whenever you want to insert that trigger that's going to release that emotion. So be precise, be specific, and be detailed. So our goal as writers is to write page-turning novels and to write memorable novels. We want our readers to remember our stories. We want our readers to, first of all, turn the pages continuously, not put the book down. But then once they finish it, we want them to remember our book because it touched them emotionally, because they could relate to it, they could relate to the character, they could relate to the issues and the emotions that were in that book. I'm a women's fiction writer because I love deeply emotional women's fiction novels. I love reading them, and I love trying to create those same emotions in my stories. But I also really love reading suspenseful thrillers. I don't write those, but I really love reading them. And what do I want to feel as a reader? I want that heart-stopping, right? Oh, but I want my blood pressure to go up when I'm tense because of a scene that's happening. And what's creating that is not the scene itself. It's not the character running from a bad guy. It is those triggers that author is creating. So maybe he's running from this bad guy and he knows he's not going to get away because the last time that this happened, he didn't get away, right? So whatever it is, whatever that character is feeling, I'm feeling that as a reader, and I love that. I love that the author has created those triggers for me and the character. And so what is all this about? It's really about connection. It's about us connecting to our readers. When the reader feels connected to you and to your stories, the reader's going to come back and buy more of your books, read more of your books, going to find you on social media. They're going to do the things that we as writers and authors want. So as you're writing or as you're editing your novel, think about this. Did I add those emotional triggers into my story? And how has it improved my book? And currently I'm building a list of cohorts that are going to be in my next novel writing, 12-month novel writing class. So I'm going to put a link down at the bottom if you're interested in having of taking the next 12 months to write your novel. If you want my help and the help of other students who will also be in the group, then click on the link, and I would love to work with you in the next 12 months. Now, if you've liked this video, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and share this with other people. Thank you for being here, and I can't wait to see you again next week.